Imagine graduating into one of the most modern economies on Earth. The skyline glows. Delivery apps move at lightning speed. Automated factories export to the world. Yet, after 4 years of study, the job you trained for may not be there. That contradiction is the real story of China's economy in 2026. It is not a simple collapse, and it is not a story in which every factory is leaving. It is a structural transition happening on 3 fronts at once: a difficult market for young graduates, households made cautious by the property downturn, and supply chains that are becoming more automated and more geographically diverse. Each force is powerful on its own. Together, they create a feedback loop that reaches far beyond China, affecting prices, investment, and the way everything from batteries to smartphones is made. To see it clearly, we need to begin with the people arriving at the job market right now. China expects about 12.7 million university graduates in 2026, another record. For decades, a degree was treated as the safest route into the urban middle class. Families invested in tutoring, exam preparation, and university fees because education appeared to offer a reliable bargain. Study hard now, find secure white-collar work later. But the number of graduates has expanded faster than the supply of the jobs many of them expected. In June 2026, the official unemployment rate for people aged 16 to 24, excluding students, was 14.9%. That was the lowest reading in a year, but it was still far above the 4% rate for workers aged 30 to 59. There is an important footnote. In 2023, the old youth measure, which included students, reached 21.3%. Publication was then paused and the statistical method was revised. The new series excludes full-time students, so the old and new figures should not be compared as if they were identical. But whichever series we use, the gap between young workers and older workers remains unusually wide, and unemployment is only part of the problem. There is also underemployment, graduates accepting work that does not use their training, postponing entry through postgraduate or civil service exams, or returning home while they continue searching. That experience produced a powerful cultural reference. Kong Yiji, a fictional scholar who could not let go of the status symbol of his long gown. Online, young people asked whether education had given them a gown that was difficult to remove, even when the available work was manual or insecure. Another phrase, full-time children, describes some adults who moved home, helped with household tasks, and received support from their parents while preparing for their next step. These phrases are not a census of an entire generation. They matter because they capture a mismatch in expectations. China can have vacancies in construction, services, or particular manufacturing roles at the same time that graduates struggle to find suitable professional work. A vacancy is not automatically a match when the location, pay, conditions, skills, and career path are wrong. The private sectors that once absorbed many young graduates have also changed. Property and related services contracted. Technology and private education went through regulatory upheaval and layoffs. Finance and other professional services became more selective. At the same time, automation and artificial intelligence began changing what firms need from entry-level employees. There is also a timing problem. Employers often want experience, while graduates need a first job in order to acquire it. A cautious company can leave an entry-level position empty or combine it with another role. Multiply that decision across thousands of firms and the first rung of the career ladder becomes harder to reach. That is why headline vacancy counts can look healthier than the experience of people sending out applications. The result is not that education has become worthless. It is that the old promise connecting a degree to a particular kind of job has weakened. And that employment pressure leads directly to the second part of the story: why Chinese households are spending so cautiously. For years, property was more than a place to live. It was the main store of wealth for many urban families, a source of local government revenue, and a vast engine for construction, materials, finance, furniture, and appliances. Estimates vary by definition, but research from the International Monetary Fund has placed property and its indirect links at roughly 1/5 to 1/4 of economic activity at the peak. When that engine slowed, the effect spread far beyond developers. Home sales fell sharply from their peak. Prices weakened in many cities. Unfinished projects damaged confidence. A household watching its largest asset lose value does not need to lose its job before changing its behavior. It delays a car purchase, chooses a cheaper restaurant, or saves more for an uncertain future. Local governments also felt the slowdown because land sales had been an important source of revenue. When that income weakened, some local authorities had less space for new projects and public spending. The property correction therefore hit household balance sheets, private companies, and local finance at the same time. This helps explain why a rescue focused only on developers cannot instantly restore consumer confidence. China still has enormous consumer markets, and spending has not disappeared. The problem is that household demand has been too soft to replace the old property-led model quickly. The International Monetary Fund has described private domestic demand as lackluster. The World Bank has also pointed to subdued demand, softer labor income, and pressure on business margins. Think of the chain reaction. Property weakness makes households feel less secure. Cautious households spend less. Businesses compete harder for each sale. Price cuts squeeze profits. Companies delay hiring or wage increases. That makes workers even more cautious, and the loop starts again. You can see this pressure in intense competition across electric vehicles, food delivery, retail, and coffee. Low prices can be good for consumers, but when discounting becomes a fight for survival, it can leave firms with less room to invest in people. This is one reason strong production numbers can coexist with a weak feeling at street level. Now we reach the most misunderstood part of the story, manufacturing. The dramatic headline says, "Factories are abandoning China." The reality is more complicated. China remains the world's largest manufacturing ecosystem, with ports, suppliers, engineers, logistics networks, and industrial clusters that are extremely difficult to reproduce. In 2025, China still accounted for about 70% of global electric car production and more than 80% of battery cell production. Those are not the numbers of a country that has stopped making things, but global companies have learned that concentrating too much production in one country creates risk. Tariffs, export controls, pandemic disruptions, geopolitical tension, and shipping shocks have all encouraged a strategy often called China Plus One. A company may retain major Chinese operations while placing its next line or its export-focused capacity in Vietnam, India, Mexico, Malaysia, Thailand, or another market. That is diversification, not necessarily abandonment. The World Trade Organization's research on global value chains shows that countries including Vietnam and Mexico have expanded their roles in electronics, machinery, and transport equipment. The shift is uneven and depends on the industry. China often remains inside the supply chain as a source of components, machinery, capital, or technical expertise, even when final assembly moves elsewhere. The new map is not a clean replacement of one factory by another. It is a network. Components can cross borders several times before a finished product reaches a customer. A plant in Southeast Asia may rely on Chinese equipment and intermediate goods, while a Chinese producer may open a facility overseas to stay close to a growing market or avoid a tariff. The label on the final product can hide how interconnected the system remains. For employment, however, the location of the next factory matters. If the next assembly line is built outside China, the new production jobs, logistics roles, maintenance work, and some support functions are created there. Even a partial shift can reduce the number of new positions that would otherwise have appeared in a Chinese industrial city. At the same time, the factories that remain are automating rapidly. According to the International Federation of Robotics, China had more than 2 million industrial robots operating in factories in 2024, after installing nearly 295,000 units in that year alone. China represented more than half of global robot installations. Automation can raise productivity, improve quality, and keep manufacturing competitive as wages rise. It can also create new jobs in engineering, software, integration, and maintenance. But an automated line does not need the same number or the same mix of workers as a labor-intensive assembly plant. This creates a double transition. Some lower-cost production expands in other countries, while production inside China moves toward robotics, advanced machinery, and higher-value industries. Neither trend automatically produces the huge volume of mid-level, entry-friendly jobs required to absorb a record class of graduates. Beijing's answer is partly built around what it calls new quality productive forces. Innovation-led growth in advanced manufacturing, artificial intelligence, electric vehicles, batteries, clean energy, and other emerging industries. This strength is real. In 2025, China produced nearly 3/4 of the world's electric cars, and Chinese firms remain dominant across key parts of the battery supply chain. These sectors can generate growth, exports, and highly skilled careers, but they are often capital-intensive. A modern battery or semiconductor plant can produce extraordinary value with fewer workers per unit of output than a traditional garment or assembly factory. The central challenge is therefore not only how much the economy grows, but what kind of employment that growth creates, where it is located, and whether young people can enter it. Now connect the three parts. Young workers facing uncertain careers save more and spend less. Weak consumption compresses business revenue and hiring. Property weakness reinforces caution. Manufacturers respond to thin margins with automation, cost-cutting, or overseas diversification. Fewer accessible jobs then feed back into the anxiety of the next graduating class. This is why the situation cannot be understood through a single statistic. A country can lead the world in electric vehicles and industrial robots, while many graduates still feel shut out. It can remain the center of global manufacturing while losing a portion of new assembly investment. It can report solid headline growth while households behave as if the future is uncertain. There are ways to weaken the loop. Stronger social protection could reduce precautionary saving. Completing stalled housing projects could rebuild confidence. More open and predictable conditions for private businesses could support hiring. Vocational routes, apprenticeships, and better job matching could connect graduates with emerging technical roles. And service industries, which are usually more labor-intensive than advanced factories, could absorb more workers if domestic demand strengthens. The quality of work matters as much as the quantity. A job that offers no training, unstable hours, or little chance of advancement may solve a statistic without solving the mismatch. Policies that help smaller private firms grow, protect workers, and turn technical training into recognized career paths could make the transition less painful. None is a quick fix, because confidence returns through repeated evidence, not a single announcement. China's government has made employment a priority and announced measures to expand jobs in manufacturing, consumption, services, and new industries. The difficult part is scale. 12.7 million graduates are entering the market in a single year, while technology and global trade are changing the structure of work at the same time. So is China facing a temporary slowdown or a permanent transformation? The answer is probably both. Property can stabilize. Consumer confidence can recover. Youth unemployment can fall. But the movement toward automation, a more educated workforce, and geographically diversified supply chains is unlikely to reverse completely. The deeper story is not that China is simply rising or falling. It is that the economic model that created millions of factory jobs, rising property wealth, and predictable graduate careers is being rebuilt while people are still living inside it. And that is why this transition matters everywhere. It will shape where companies build, which countries gain industrial jobs, how quickly clean technologies become cheaper, and what opportunities the next generation can expect from education. Do you think China Plus One will permanently redraw global supply chains? And what should governments do when higher education expands faster than traditional white-collar work? Share your view in the comments. If you found this analysis useful, like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications for our next deep dive into the forces reshaping the global economy.